This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Geico makes it easy to get affordable renter's insurance in as little as 90 seconds. That way, you have more energy for harder things, like the laundry. Why is it so difficult to fold clothes? They just end up wrinkly anyway, or on the floor in a pile that just sits there, taunting you. But with renter's insurance through Geico, at least you know that those clothes and the other things you love are covered. Get more with Geico.
If you love chilling mysteries, unsolved cases, and a touch of mom-style humor, Moms and Mysteries is the podcast you've been searching for. Hey guys, I'm Mandy.
And I'm Melissa. Join us every Tuesday for Moms and Mysteries, your gateway to gripping, well-researched true crime stories. Each week, we deep dive into a variety of mind-boggling cases as we shed light on everything from heists to whodunits. We're your go-to podcast for mysteries with a motherly touch. Subscribe now to Moms and Mysteries wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello to everybody who can identify a college because they used to hang out with the social scene of that college through their one ex-girlfriend, and now they can always identify graduates of that college successfully. It's Beautiful Anonymous. 1 hour, one phone call, no names, no holds barred.
I'd rather go one-on-one. I think it'll be more fun, and I'll get to know you, and you'll get to know me.
Hi everybody, Chris Gethard here. We've got a particularly long intro this week because we have feedback from last week. I have a bunch of tour dates to plug, and it just goes, and it's good. It's a good one, and I like it. If you want to know about those tour dates, definitely listen. I'm going all over the country this summer and fall. Sign up for beautifulanonymous.com. But if you're not into a long intro, you're going to want to skip probably about like 20, 25 minutes. I lost track of time a little bit. It's, I think, pretty pleasant and engaging. But if you just are a person who wants the phone call, skip ahead like 20, 22, 25, something like that. You'll get real close to the phone call. Thanks, everybody. Hi, everybody. Chris Gethard here. Welcome to another episode of Beautiful Anonymous. And this is going to be a longer intro because there's much to discuss. There's so much to discuss. The first thing we have to talk about, last week's episode was one of the most divisive in the history of the show, and I knew it would be. I think anyone who listened to it knew it would be. And first of all, the Beautiful Anonymous, the community on Facebook, is still going strong, and it's lovely and laid back. There's 35,000 people in there. I don't know how many of them are dormant, but the people who do participate would all vouch for me. It is just a laid back place to discuss episodes, and in social media and the internet where everybody gets together to fight, our community has rallied against that. As you can imagine, last week's episode, which we titled Wrote the New Bible, about our caller who spent 35 years working on a novel and then self-published it and then spent 17 minutes reading from it on the show. People had strong opinions. These opinions ran the gamut. I just want to point out some that are just back-to-back in that group. We've got... You got someone saying, I've never posted in this group before, but this is the one that I have to talk about. Listening to this caller go off is like finding a long-lost sibling. She's found her way to almost exactly the same spiritual cosmology I've been assembling, which I similarly have done over the course of decades of exploring different occult and spiritual practice, a few years of conversations with my friend who's a master's-level theoretical physicist, and in my case, most importantly, uncovering and actualizing my gender. Caller, if you're out there, I want to read your book and be your friend. I'm in awe of your work and your clarity. It's inspiring and affirming to witness other nodes in the network, so to speak, tuning into this holistic understanding of our place in the fabric. We've got that. Very next comment, and it's respectful. Listening to this call felt like work. I have a hard enough time dealing with our real, regular world. So we've got one person saying this is like a sibling who has cut through the cosmos, who I feel like I'm finding via this show. Another person saying this felt like work. Then the next one, right in the middle. I think I'll need to listen at least one more time to see if I fully understand all the ideas the caller has. I love it. Even Andy, who posts every single week and always gives a very thoughtful, very well-written update on the post. Even the weekly Andy this week said, I'm afraid I'm not on board with you, caller, but I'll support you to the ends of Gaia to believe this sort of thing. I hope it brings you joy and closer to your family rather than lead to the alienation you seem to feel possible. Went on from there. And then the very next comment made me laugh so hard. Hear me out. The caller from last week dropped a few tabs, watched the Goonies, started working on this book, and then called us back from the future to share her update. It just went in so many different directions with the comments. But like I said, everyone's kind and respectful. And even there were a lot of people that said that was not their favorite call, but people were still so kind about it. We had people in there saying it felt in line with the old school call. We should support her as much as we did with the guy that recorded over 10,000 songs. They're from the same branch. I think that's beautiful. There was a big discussion in the Facebook group. Some people actually, it wasn't even about the content of the caller's book. It was a bunch of people saying the caller sort of went out of her way to say she wasn't going to ask me how I was doing in the beginning. And some people were turned off by that. And then other people saying, if the caller happens to be neurodivergent, that this is something we should not judge. And then other people saying, I don't know that the caller was neurodivergent, but also this show is about the caller. And if the caller wants to brag about and maybe promote a book, let's let it be that. It was a very fascinating comments thread. Calvin in the group just put, yo, Chris, I think your feed got cross-wired with Joe Rogan's, which makes me laugh so hard. Made me laugh so hard. And thanks to this community for being, because here's the thing that I love, right? It's easy. And I think there's other communities where if the caller put out her book, there are other online communities that might go and start making memes and making fun. But even the people who said this one is not for me were not taking pot shots. And I think there's something to be remembered that when you go to the post office or you run in and eat a quick meal at the counter of your local diner, or you're sitting in traffic, the person at the other diner booth or the person in line at the post office or the person in the car next to you might be someone who views the world and experiences the world purely differently than you. And if you think that it's, slicing through the cosmos to connect you to, that's great. If you go, this one I felt like I had to turn off because it was so out of left field to me, that's great too. But all of these people exist and we're all around each other every day. And I love that our community is one that doesn't jump on each other. Our community is one that supports the right to say things, even if the things seem outlandish or unmoored in the reality that we prescribe to. I feel so lucky. What a beautiful and strange and call, and one that deserved all the online chatter that it got in our group. And thanks to everybody over there at the Beautiful Anonymous, the community on Facebook, for being such a big driving force of why I've kept this show going for so long. I have to thank everybody who has signed up at beautifulanonymous.com. If you're not on Beautiful Anonymous Plus, just understand, especially if you buy it on an annual basis, we've tried to keep it really cheap and affordable. I think everybody who is experiencing it would agree that that extra 20 minutes to just kind of get to decompress with the caller, know some other facets of who they are, is pretty lovely. And the people at the touch-tone tier, they get the extra phone number, they get the follow-up calls. It's been such a joy, and I always like to keep you updated. It hasn't exploded like we were all hoping it would. But again, to someone who I saw posting online that they felt bad for me, never feel bad for me. And this absolutely joyous life I lead and project I go for, my anxiety sometimes flares up, but Beautiful Anonymous has always been a bulwark against the anxieties of my life and a source of strength and a safety net. Did I use the phrase bulwark? Bulwark? Did I pronounce it correctly? Did I use it? It's helped me draw some lines in the sand to protect against the anxiety. And the fact that we have 761 people over there at beautifulanonymous.com signed up for Beautiful Anonymous Plus, those are 761 people who are giving me such a huge vote of confidence to make sure that this show has as much breathing room as possible to survive. And we have this contract with an advertising company for the next few years, and that's awesome. But there might be a day where that contract goes away, and those 761 people who have signed up at beautifulanonymous.com are the people who might allow this thing to survive even further, because we all know that entertainment is getting squeezed and artists are getting squeezed, and it's not a hard life. And I don't sit here and love how much artists complain about the complexities of the artist's life. There's harder lives, but direct connection with fans is the future of art that survives. So thanks to everybody who signed up, all 761 of you. And if I've said it before, I get a big bonus if we get to, I think, 2,000 signups, 2,500 signups. It's so unlikely that I've actually stopped even thinking about it. But if you have it in you to sign up, do understand that if you do it within the first year of Beautiful Anonymous Plus, and I think we're 3 or 4 months in, you will straight up help my family financially. But that's not on you. But if you feel like you're so inspired, thanks in advance. I have to tell you that I'm excited. I'm going out on tour to do some stand-up shows. I'm going to tell you about the first big batch of dates that have already been announced, and we've got another very cool project I'm going to be part of. I'll be able to tell you about that with a handful more, a handful of other cities that I'll be going to as well. For now, May 16th, I'm doing a benefit show for the Newark Public Library in Jersey, donating my time on that one. They offered to pay me. I said, nah, I'm an Essex County guy. I'll do that one for free. And then June 29th, the Sweet and Sour Tour starts. June 29th, I'll be in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. June 30th, I'll be in Woodstock, New York. July 31st, I'll be back in Morgantown, West Virginia. That's a show that's related to Laughing Together. That's not part of the Sweet and Sour Tour, but I'll tell you more about that later. August 14th in St. Louis at Off-Broadway, which I've done once before, and it immediately became one of my favorite venues. August 15th in Cudahy, which is part of the Milwaukee metro area. X-Ray Arcade, incredible venue. August 17th, Ferndale, Michigan at the Loving Touch. August 18th, Lakewood, Ohio, right outside of Cleveland at the Roxy, which I think is the old bowling alley. They've rebranded the name. October 2nd, Somerville, Mass. That'll be the Boston area show this year. October 3rd, huge show for me, Crossroads, Garwood, New Jersey, one of the best venues in New Jersey. October 4th, the Otto Bar in Baltimore, Maryland, which I've gone on record on this podcast as saying that that is the venue in this country that is nearest and dearest to my heart. I have no idea if the people there feel the same way about me, but I think the Otto Bar is spiritually a home for me. It's the place where we recorded the live episode with my Aussie best friend. I loved it. October 6th, Hamden, Connecticut. I'll be at Space Ballroom. Now, the Sweet and Sour Tour, why is it so special to me? It's because of the people I'm doing the tour with. And it's reinvigorating my love of comedy. Because every Beautiful Anonymous listener, if you've listened from the start, you know that I have a very... People ask me what my job is, and on a broad level, I will say comedian. Even though this podcast is not comedy, my HBO special was about some very sad stuff. It had a lot of funny moments. My My TV show was experimental and weird. In the past handful of years, I was very affected, and I should not have been. But in the pandemic, there were a few comedians that came after me on their podcasts. And one of them was a former friend of mine. That one broke my heart. The other people were people I've never even met. And I've always been pretty good about disregarding the opinions of people who want to say the easy things. You know, some of these people out here calling me homophobic names, saying that I'm weak, saying that I'm emo. And I sit here and I go, if you want to say that I'm emo, or you want to say that I'm weak because I'm trying to do something different and what I do doesn't look like what you do, which to me, a lot of what these people do just looks like bullying. I go, I'm actually flattered to know that people cut from your cloth don't like what I do. If you want to call me homophobic names, actually, many of my favorite artists, from musicians to visual artists, all have been attacked with homophobia. It's actually an honor that puts me in the same class as Morrissey and David Bowie and so many other artists, beautiful artists who have opened themselves up. Anyway, it's easy to laugh about this stuff. But point being, comedy's kind of not a fun vibe for people like me anymore. And I have a feeling for people who follow me and people who listen to this show. My guess is that there's a lot of listeners to this show who maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, used to go out to comedy shows as part of their entertainment budget. Get a babysitter, go to a comedy show. My guess is that many listeners of this show do not regularly do that anymore. Why? Because you're smart people. And I don't know if smart people want to go. Why? Why am I saying this? Well, first of all, I'm actually not fundamentally against TikTok. I have many questions about how it's going to turn out and if it's going to be shut down in the United States. But I like the democratization that people can get their work out without gatekeepers. If anybody is a fan of that, it's a guy who built a lot of his career off of public access television. That being said, what I don't love is that fundamentally comedians, you work really hard on jokes. If your crowd knows the punchline that's coming, they're not going to laugh. So when you throw stuff up on TikTok, you don't throw your best stuff. And then what people do instead is a lot of crowd work, is a lot of attacking the audience, is a lot of interacting with the audience. And some of it's very skillful, but any comedian who's been doing it for a year can tell you there's a lot of people who have had videos blow up where you go, man, you are not even a good comedian. You are just baiting this audience into a fight. And there's a dopamine kick that comes with that for a viewer. There's an adrenaline rush. But a lot of comedians will tell you, crowds have been showing up, particularly the last 2 years now, and they heckle and they think they're helping. And they are experiencing comedy more and more as this very aggressive back and forth thing. It's never been what I'm about. And I don't mind telling you that I'm happy to try to be thoughtful. I'm happy to try to speak to where I'm at in real life and see if it connects to where you're at in real life. I'm happy to grab a microphone and sort out my thoughts into hopefully some funny stories that might help us pull back the corners on the stuff that makes us feel really stressed out about the world. And that if we do that together, we can feel less stressed out. I think that's the function of an artist at the end of the day, at least how I've always viewed it. I don't know that smart people feel totally comfortable spending their money on comedy anymore. It's such a bummer that we as a community, that we as comedians have become so addicted to what the algorithms give us, because the algorithms can help people sell a lot of tickets. But it also, like, one of the most distressing things I've seen on social media in recent years is there's a comedian named Ariel Elias. She's great. She got a full beer can thrown at her head at a club. Now, it helped her career immensely. She got on Kimmel and all sorts of stuff. But I don't think it should take a full beer can being thrown at your head, allowing you to go viral on social media, for a comedian to pop off. Ariel should pop off because she's really good and she's been backing it up, which is awesome. But point being, if you're somebody who's got a couple kids and you've got to pay for a sitter, and then you want to go out for dinner because it's one of your rare nights off and you might have to pay for parking, and then you want to get a couple drinks at a show, And that's all before the ticket price. And the ticket price might be through Ticketmaster or Live Nation and have these jacked up fees, but you've already got the sitter. So you're like, we'll have a night out. Are you really going to spend your time going, I don't know if I want to go to a comedy show because somebody might start shouting about politics from the crowd and ruin the night? Or what if the comedian asks me what my job is and starts making fun of it? And that's what I did with my goddamn night off from the kids, from the job. When, speaking of the kids, you might hear Cal shouting as loud as he can, I'm going to step on the floor. Something you may have noticed in the show from time to time is that you'll occasionally hear a faint knock. That is me stepping on the floor, begging my wife and son to be a little more quiet. Hey, Cal, I'm recording, buddy. Can leave that in. Can leave that in, Andrea. Just leave that one in. I was making the point. If you got to spend a couple $100, and I'm so sensitive this now. I'm very sensitive to this as the father of a 5-year-old, and you go, I could see a comedian or I could go see a band. Which is it going to be? Probably a band. A band isn't going to go, oh, you work for the you work for the Postal Service? What are you, a mailman? What, you wear the funny shorts? They're not going to start ripping into you. A band is going to play the goddamn songs and let you dance and forget about your problems for a while. That's the comedy I'm still aiming to do, everybody. And if that means that other people with their tough guy bully podcasts want to call me homophobic names, absolutely. Go for broke. Have all the fun in the world with it. If that somehow makes me mockable in your eyes. Mock me for wanting to give my crowd a good time that's worth their money, where they don't feel attacked and put off. That's the kind of show I'm trying to put on for you. And the Sweet and Sour Tour is with 2 people. One of them's a young comedian. He's in his 20s. His name's Keegan Tyndall. He's based in Jersey City. Fantastic. Absolutely crushing it on social media. He's kind of notorious amongst Jersey comics that he only does bits. With me, he views me as someone older. I think he's going to be mad that I revealed this publicly. He has had some genuine conversations with me. And he's going to be mad because his reputation is that he never has genuine conversations. He only does bits. But he and I have talked, and one thing he has said to me, he's like, yeah, he's got all this social media success. And he's like, people are offering me headlining gigs on the road. I want to make sure that when I go do that, I know how to crush it. I don't want to just use the social media hype if I can't bring it. So Keegan's coming on the tour, and I think a big part of that I've always loved is he's a younger comedian, hopefully coming out. He can learn how to deal with a venue. He can learn how to ask for his money if the money isn't coming in. He can learn how to navigate a situation where the crowd isn't what was expected, and he can get a little glimpse. Mike Birbiglia did this for me. I was already pretty well established in 2014 when I opened for Birbiglia. I'm going to do this for Keegan, and it's not just me that's doing it. Now, also with Keegan, you should know, look him up. His social media stuff is so funny. Really, really funny, really, really charming, really smart. He's also so easy to root for, and I'm not trying to use his life experience to sell tickets, but just as far as a guy you want to support, he was in a car accident a few years back. He almost died. And when you watch his social media, you'll see he's got some scars from it. And I'm like, man, if there's anybody I want to get out and support and root for, it's somebody who's faced some adversity like that and who has gone, I need to make the most of every day and try to make the best art I can. And that's his attitude. It's awesome. The other person co-headlining the tour with me is the great Eddie Pepitone. If you don't know Eddie is a very inspiring comic. Many comedians will point to him as their favorite comic. He's brilliant. He's in his mid-60s. When I was a young improviser in New York, I once did a show where it was some improv, some stand-up. And that was always scary for the improv people because we always thought the stand-ups were going to make fun of us. I watched Eddie that night, and my whole conception of stand-up comedy changed because he was so different and so good. And he does stuff that can be dark and can be challenging and can look at current events in ways that initially make you uncomfortable. And then by the end, you are howling with delight. And he's just a brilliant guy. So you've kind of got 3 generations of slightly unusual comedy going on the road together with this tour. And again, that one's in Lancaster, PA, Woodstock, New York, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Detroit, Cleveland, Boston, Jersey, Baltimore, Hamden, Connecticut, And then on top of that, I've also got shows on sale in Newark, New Jersey, and Morgantown, West Virginia, separate from that tour. But it's going to be a beautiful thing. And when that idea came up, I'm really slowing down. I make money on the road, and we're trying to finish our basement right now and turn it into a playroom for Cal. So I said, okay, I guess I'll go do some tours. When the idea came up, you can tour with Eddie Pepitone, I said, that is someone I want to watch every day. That is someone that I can stomach watching his set every day to see what he does. Because he brings the joy and the giddiness that comedy used to give me right back to the surface. Going out on the road with Keegan Tyndall every day. What a good, hardworking, hilarious young comic. This is a tour that's feeling very reinvigorating to me, and hopefully you'll buy a ticket and it will be reinvigorating to you. Now, this intro has been so long because there's been so much to talk about. I'm going to tell you this next call you're about to hear, I loved it. Our caller is a journalist, but not just a journalist, a proud local journalist. Made note of that right from the start. And as I think you've all picked up, I really believe in many aspects of things being regional. I like knowing that when I grew up in the New York metro area in northern New Jersey, I was watching a kid's show called Steam Pipe Alley. I know that my weathermen were Sam Champion and Willard Scott and Roz Abrams and Ernie Anastas were some of the news anchors. And there was stuff that was regional to us, and every metro area has that. And there's things you grew up with. Now, people are growing up with the internet more, these centralized places where you pick it out. But I also love... part of why I still enjoy going on the road is I like knowing that when I go to St. Louis, I can get some pizza with the Provel cheese. I like knowing that when I'm in Detroit on August 17th, I might go get some of that square pizza. I like knowing that there's different sodas, that Avery Soda is going to be up in Connecticut when I'm out there. But then when I'm out, maybe going to Kentucky, I announced some of those dates later on down the year, I might be able to get L81. These different regional things that give spice and joy and seasoning to the experience of growing up and that make us all appreciate our commonalities and our slight differences. So hearing from somebody that works regionally, I had so many questions, let alone someone who works in news, especially as we enter what promises to be very divisive election year. We don't lean on that too heavily, but to talk with somebody in the media about what has happened as far as how people speak about the media in recent times was very interesting as well. I loved this call. I think you're going to love it too. At the very least, whether you loved it or it was not your thing, the caller does not read from a novel for 17 straight minutes. That was last week. Most of all, I really hope you enjoy this one because I know I did. I'll see you out on the road. Tickets for all the shows, you can find them at chrisgeth.com. Thanks to everybody in the Facebook group. Thanks to everybody at beautifulanonymous.com. You all are the best. This might be one of the longest intros ever, but I had a lot of things I needed to say. Thanks for allowing me to vent and plug and do all the stuff we do in these intros. Enjoy it, everybody.
Thank you for calling Beautiful Anonymous. A beeping noise will indicate when you are on the show with the host.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, caller.
This is so strange, finally being on with you. I've made it to the hold music in the past, but this is my first time being patched through and speaking with the high priestess.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'm doing something I've never done before. I have not started the clock yet, because I want to warn you and the listeners about something, which is we scheduled this taping, and then a friend asked me to cover his shift driving the ambulance in town, and I said yes, which I wouldn't have done if I remembered we had Beautiful Anonymous, but I'm technically on duty as an ambulance driver right now. So in the event you hear some crazy, loud pager beeps, and then it ends quickly, we will call you back. We will mark how much time you have left. Hopefully it doesn't happen. And hopefully it's not too jarring for the listeners, but I have mentioned that I've been driving for the ambulance squad. So I will now start the clock now that I've explained that.
All right, here we go.
How are you?
Other than that, yeah, I was going to ask you how you're doing. I'm doing well. today is my day off work. So when I heard that you were going to be recording at this time on this day, I thought, what a better chance to chat with you.
It's meant to be so clearly. As far as how I'm doing, I'll say I'll always be honest. I'll tell you two things. One, I've had a horrific sleep the past few weeks. There's a great podcast, Therapy Jeff runs this great podcast, and he had me on, and you go back twice, and it's sort of playful, non-medical, therapeutic, but not therapy. And I was asked to examine my sleep as part of it, and now my sleep is just horrible. Once I start thinking too hard about sleep, I can't sleep. The other thing is I've been on duty since 7 a.m. my time, so that's 9 hours so far. Did have one call today that left me kind of rattled as far as driving the ambulance, but that's okay. That's what I signed up for. So that's where I'm at. Exhausted, and saw some things on the 911 call that I didn't love seeing. But outside of that, great. I got a great life. Doing good.
Yeah, I get that. So the thing that I talked to Andrea about that I wanted to talk to you about is for the past 12 years, I've worked in local TV newsrooms as a producer. And so I experienced traumatic things like what you see driving an ambulance, but from the newsroom. So like I get fed back video and sound of scenes and have to log all those interviews and like see the scene from, a distance. But when big news breaks, I mean, you're in it. You have to get all the details down, report it out to the public as soon as possible. So I get being rattled by something traumatic.
Yeah. And so you work local news. I find this fascinating. It sounds like you're working.
I was hoping you would.
Yeah. I mean, everybody knows I love a call from someone with a very specific job. And it sounds to me like you're working news. And who knows? Local stations are really fascinating. And I want to talk all about it because you maybe have to do it all. But it sounds like you're focusing more on news of the day, less human interest pieces, less stuff. Just based on what you've described, it sounds like, nope, something happens, you're the one who's on it, and you're not sure what that's going to be on any given day.
So it depends. So I'm in a cool role that's kind of like a hybrid situation. So today is a Tuesday. It's my day off. I work Wednesday through Sunday. Wednesday through Friday, if I'm not filling in producing a newscast, I am working on like human interest, special projects, things that take weeks to put together. And then on the weekends, I'm producing evening newscasts and also overseeing all of the editorial decisions. So I kind of get to split my time between the more in-depth stuff that really tugs at the heartstrings and then like feeding the beast of just the everyday things that pop up.
I mean, that sounds like a lot of hard work and emotionally draining. It also sounds like if you went to school for journalism, pretty cool gig to land.
Oh yeah, this has been the dream since I was 12, and I'm 31 now. So the fact that I'm still doing it is pretty exciting.
It's awesome. And how local is local when you say you work in local news? We have to talk about local TV. I have such affection and nostalgia and fondness for local TV. And I actually feel like, and I'm sure you have very strong opinions on this, there used to be a base level attachment to local TV, I think, growing up wherever you grew up. I don't know that that's as true anymore in the world of internet delivered news and streaming services delivering entertainment. I want to talk about the past of local TV, but I also want to hear about the present and what exactly you mean when you say you work in local news.
Yeah, so I am based in a larger city in the Midwest, and so I predominantly work on news that is about what's happening in our metro area. I'm also from the Midwest, not born and raised in the city that I'm working in now, but just kind of on the other side of the state from where I was born. And I've been here for 5.5 years, and yes, obviously when huge national and international news breaks, we cover that. We try to localize it with people who have connections who are based here in the metro. But it's really focused on just telling people what's going on in their own backyard.
Do you feel like the news, it seems to me like news and sports are two things that still have a really strong regional presence on TV. Does that strike you as truthful as well?
Yes. I don't want to give away too much, but in the place where I live, sports is news, and sports is king for multiple reasons. We have multiple sports teams that are hot right now, and so that has been, like, covering big events in the sports world has been some of, like, the biggest coverage that I've been involved with. And we've been fortunate enough to have good things happen with our sports teams multiple times in the last few years. If you follow any major sports, you might be able to guess where I'm talking about. But
I would actually argue, though,
funny.
When you think about the Midwest, there's pro teams in every league, and then on the college level, you're in Big Ten country. So it's actually, I would actually say it's in some ways maybe hard to guess, because there's such an abundance of badass sports going on all over the Midwest when you can factor in the college side of things too.
Yeah, who knows? I could be talking about all different kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, sports is news where I am, which is funny for me because I was a musical theater kid. And so when I got this job 5.5 years ago, like, I barely knew the big players on the big teams. And now I can, like, look up real quick and be like, oh, that's so-and-so.
What's people's attachment to your on-air personalities? Because I pine nostalgic for a time, and maybe this is just me being something of a cord cutter at this point, but I miss growing up. I grew up North Jersey, so that's part of the New York broadcasts. So we had CBS, NBC, Fox, ABC. Then we had the really great local stations. Channel 9 was WWOR. Channel 11 was WPIX. One of them carried the Mets. One of them covered the Yankees. Real local stuff, but like the local anchors, whether it was the weatherman, Sam Champion, whether it was Roz Abrams on the news desk, Ernie Anastas was on Fox. These are people whose names you came to know. And also, they almost were beloved locally specifically for not being national, if that makes sense. Like, you had your Tom Brokaw, your Dan Rather, the national people, and they demanded this respect. But were any of them going to pick up side pay opening a car dealership on Route 10 a few towns over from you? No, but the local anchor might, like the local anchor might come help dedicate a monument that goes up in your small town. Like, you might be able to get somebody from Channel 5 or Channel 9 or even Channel 7. And I'm wondering if people still feel that fondness and that attachment to your news team.
I mean, absolutely. Like, the
cool.
Anecdotal evidence that people care about who they get their news from. Anytime I tell someone where I work, they either say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't watch the news, or if they do watch the news, they say, oh my God, I love XYZ person. Like, are they like that in real life? Which I just credit to the people we've been able to grow on our team, because they are who they seem to be. Like, when the lights aren't on and the cameras aren't rolling, there is no difference. Like, they bring their full selves, I feel like, to their on-camera work. And it just extends to what they do in the community. Like, one of our anchors started a fundraiser to get kids shoes who don't have a good pair of shoes to wear to school. And the first year, this is going to give it away if anyone knows what I'm talking about, but that's okay. The first year we raised like $50,000, and the second year we raised more than $100,000. So just think about, like, because one guy had one idea about how to make a positive impact in the community, how many kids are getting a sweet pair of kicks so that they're comfortable walking around to class. They don't get made fun of, you know, if they come from a background where their shoes were worn out. Like, it's just so cool to see that ideas that we have in the newsroom can then turn into wide community impact.
I love that. I love that. And, you know, now my gears are turning too, because I think a lot about, there's this phrase that's becoming more and more popular, the loneliness epidemic, that so many people in America right now are feeling extreme loneliness, even if they're people who work in offices with others or are around family at times, that people, there's this sort of loneliness that is really concerning and a red flag. And I sit here, I go, you know, I'm the one who cut the cord, and I don't miss paying for cable, but I do miss the local personalities. And I get most of my news now, and I try to be a well-read person, I get most of it from the internet, from my phone, from my computer. And there's a part of me that wonders, is part of that loneliness that I read all my news from these sources that have no personality? Whereas I used to get my news. And listen, growing up in the New York metro area, having my news coverage be New York in the 80s, a lot of time the local news was not pleasant. It was not easy, but you had a familiar face and oftentimes, when appropriate, a friendly face helping to walk you through it. Same thing with the local paper. I sometimes feel like one of the best things I could do for my mental health would be maybe just subscribe to a print edition. I subscribe to the online edition of the Star Ledger, my local New Jersey paper. But I sit there, I go, I miss opening it up. And if I'm reading about sports, there's Jerry Eisenberg's little face in that little box. That's a person that I come to feel like I know. You know, there's Alan Sepinwall writing about what TV I should watch tonight. I remember their names. That loneliness, I wonder if some of it is not this disconnection from a local infrastructure that's bumming us all out, making us all feel so isolated.
That's a really interesting thought. I mean, I've always thought of the people that you see on camera as the connectors, right? Like, they're the ones building the bridge between the viewer, the audience member, and what's happening in our community. But I never thought of it as like, it makes it, I guess I have thought of it as it makes it more personal, but like that could help with loneliness, that could help people feel more engaged with what's going on. Because I do sometimes worry when something huge happens and like people my age aren't aware of what's going on. Because I'm very big on like being civically engaged. And so like when a big vote is coming up and people don't have a plan for how to vote, I'm like, we've been talking about this for weeks, if not months. Like, here's the links to the stories that you can read and the videos you can watch. And like, please become informed and like participate, because it makes a difference. Like, it actually literally makes a difference on what happens or doesn't happen in our own area.
It's really true. It's really true. I know I've been to a few, I live in a small town in Jersey now, and I've been to a few, we have a township committee, and I've been to a couple of their meetings. And just the fact that someone's there was one where a bunch of people went because they were going to chop down a whole bunch of nature, basically, and put up a bunch of nonsense, and a whole bunch of the town showed up to speak against it. And you sit there and you go, there's so many things that happen on a local level, on a more local level than a lot of people believe, where it's just like you said, like, hey, if you didn't take the time to read the ballot, that's on you. If you didn't take the time to go to the voting booth or drop your ballot in the mail, you got to find that time to engage with what's happening with you locally. Because one thing that I noticed going to these township committee meetings, and I think this is really true, school boards right now, you see that people are able to take over school boards by strategically planning when they run, because they realize no one cares. No one will notice what we're up to until it's a problem. And by then we've already gotten what we wanted and we've won. And this is how books are getting banned all over the country. This is how laws and mandates are being passed that are making marginalized groups, especially trans kids being the one that gets talked about so much, rightfully so, of laws passed through that put them under a microscope, make them feel targeted. You sit here, you go, oh, the way these things happen ultimately, or not even ultimately, the way these things happen and come to light is because people realize that no one cares enough about what's happening in things like local elections, the local day-to-day, and then you have to unwrap the problems instead of preventing the problems. It's apathy. It's lack of engagement that gets us there.
Absolutely. And I'm someone who cares so much. That's why I got into this field.
That's cool. You're cool. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember, I'll tell you the story of how I got into wanting to be a journalist. I was 12 years old. I was homesick from school, and I was flipping through the channels. And all of a sudden, I was on National Geographic, and it said, Inside North Korea. And 12-year-old little me knew they don't let you go there. How are we getting inside North Korea? And it was Lisa Ling, who you may know. She had a CNN show for a while, but she went undercover and showed what was really happening inside average North Koreans' homes. And I just remember thinking, this is so cool that I'm learning about something that's actually happening in the real world that I would never know about if it weren't for her. And so originally I thought I wanted to be on camera. And then I did that for a year and wasn't totally happy and fulfilled. So then I switched to being behind the scenes. And in that way, I got to be involved in every story as opposed to just focusing on one story a day. And so that's what I've done ever since, for the past decade. But it all started with being a tween, homesick from school, and learning something from someone and saying, I could be that person. I want to be the person that teaches people about what's going on.
That's awesome. And you went and made it happen. And I imagine you went to school for broadcast journalism then.
I did, yes, at the world's first journalism school, which is in the U.S., in my home state. Again, if anyone listening knows me, I'm sure they know who I am by this point, but I am proud of where I went to school, so I am happy to say that I am a graduate of the world's first journalism school.
Now, I'm not sure if it's the first, but can I make a guess? And if you want it bleeped out, we can bleep it out, but can I just make a guess?
You can make a guess.
Well, you mentioned you grew up in the Midwest. And I will say I did once date someone who graduated from Mizzou, and they were all so obsessed with their journalism school. And if it's Mizzou, I've met many an obsessive graduate of the Mizzou School of Journalism. Am I correct? Let's pause right there, because I nailed it. I'm good at this. Sometimes we have weird moments on this show where you realize that I have a weird amount of surface level knowledge about a wide span of things, and that is why I've been successful at this show, and this is one of them. It's fine. I am trying to pat myself on the back a little too hard. If I had other skills, I'd be able to... Anyway, guessing what college you went to. Look, this is the longest, most rambly throw to a commercial we've ever had. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, Chris here, and I'm really, really psyched to be able to tell you about my Skylight calendar. It's been such a game changer for me. I'm looking at mine right now. It is so helpful as far as my day-to-day existence and the flow of my work life and personal life. It's also a good-looking item on my desk in my office. Looks better, actually, than most of the stuff I've chosen to put on this desk. Now, what is it? First thing I'll tell you about the Skylight calendar is it's an absolutely perfect gift for busy people in your lives, and that might mean moms right now. You might be looking for a Mother's Day gift, and if you have someone you know in your life who is a mom who is particularly busy in their schedule, the Skylight calendar will be a huge help. And for a limited time, listeners to our show get 15% off their Skylight calendars, so it's a great time to order. I love this thing. I know I just talked about moms. We all know We all know moms in our lives who are out there giving beyond maximum capacity every day between career, family, house stuff. We've all seen it in our lives, whether that's you or maybe there's someone in your life where you go, if this helps a busy person sort things out, the Skylight Calendar could not be a better product for people who have a chaotic life, who are feeling that stress, who are feeling that mental load. Make life easy. Here's what it is. I'm looking at mine right now. It's a really, really beautiful frame, digital calendar. I have an app on my phone where it auto migrates everything from my existing calendars, my personal calendar, my work calendar, and it puts it right up in front of me. When I told Andrea, the high priestess of Beautiful and Honest, about it, she immediately flipped out and was like, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like a modern version of what we all want back in our lives, which is the old whiteboard. She was like, do you know how many whiteboard calendars I have bought? And you put them up, right? Because you can write into them and you can just glance up and see what's next on your agenda. And it's right there. But then what happens? You forget to update it for a while. Maybe it's not that great and the dry erase doesn't totally work. And all of a sudden it's got like old blue and pink ink on it and it doesn't look nice anymore. And you just don't want it up in your house. And when guests come over, you take it down and then you forget to put it back up. Imagine a modern digital version of all the things you miss about that, plus more. Plus more. Plus you can put photos up there. You can put to-do lists up there. You can put chore lists up there. You can put all types of stuff up there that's going to help you keep track of everything you need in your day. And you can glance up at once. I love it because it keeps me off my phone. I don't have to go into my phone to get into my calendar anymore. I can just glance up from anywhere and go, oh, what's next? It's 10:44 right now, and at 11:15 I have a Zoom with so-and-so. Great. I know that right now is the time where I can run down and refill my water and get a snack and come back up. And what usually will happen is you take out your phone, you go to 11:15, I should get the water and the snack, but now I'm checking social media, and then you look up and go, oh, that was my half hour, and it's gone, right? The Skylight Calendar helps you keep your day organized, streamlined, and keeps your head right where you need it, so that everything you're breaking down is in front of you. And it's almost weirdly for a stationary frame, I almost feel like I borderline have a personal assistant helping me keep my day organized. I know that's strange to say. The Skylight Calendar, if we want to get back on track with the script, is a smart touchscreen calendar and organizer for all your chores, groceries, to-do lists, and a great way to manage appointments, to make sure that they don't overlap and that they're never missed. It helps keep busy households on track and everyone on the same page so families can get time back for moments that matter. I love it. The setup was so easy. I did it all. I think I was done within 10 minutes. I had the thing up and running, and it's been great ever since. It syncs everything for you. You don't have to manually update it. It's really, really nice. You can get it in two sizes. There's a 10-inch or a 15-inch. The 15-inch, you can mount it on the wall. Very cool. And you can also make it fun for your kids. You can add emojis. You can have all the stuff that kids are going to want to do when they're going through their chore lists and to-do lists on it as well. Plus, there's a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you don't love the Skylight Calendar, you'll receive a full refund. There's a 120-day money-back guarantee and free returns. As a special limited time offer for our listeners, get 15% off your purchase of a Skylight Calendar when you go to skylightcal.com/stories. That's SKYLIGHTCAL.com/stories. Mother's Day is coming right up. Order today. Get 15% off your purchase at skylightcal.com/stories. The Aura Frame, a product that I love, a product I can't get enough of, a product I just gave as a gift to two friends in my neighborhood who just had their first grandkid. I said, you are going to want the Aura Frame. And I gave them a couple of them because I love this product so much. Use mine every day. My parents use theirs every day. My mother-in-law uses hers every day. It's great. If you're looking for the perfect gift to celebrate the moms in your life, Aura Frames are beautiful, Wi-Fi connected digital picture frames. They allow you to share and display unlimited photos. Super easy to upload and share photos via the Aura app. And if you're giving an Aura as a gift, you can even personalize the frame with preloaded photos and memories. For Mother's Day this year, maybe you want to set up a mom to have a device where all the kids who are out of the house can upload pictures and the mom can get updates. You get the Aura Frame, you can set up all your kids on the app, and then all the kids who are off in college, who have moved to a city to work, they can all start uploading photos, and it's a gift that keeps on giving. It's an incredible thing. From grandmothers to new mothers, aunts, even the friends in your life, every mom loves an Aura frame. It's named the best digital photo frame by Wirecutter. It's been selected as one of Oprah's favorite things. Aura frames are guaranteed to bring joy to moms of all ages. Right now, Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. Listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $30 off, plus free shipping on their best-selling frame. That's AURA frames.com. Use the code BEAUTIFUL at checkout to save. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again to our sponsors who allow the show to happen. Now let's get back to the phone call. I've met many an obsessive graduate of the Mizzou School of Journalism. Am I correct?
Yes.
Why is everybody who went to the University of goddamn Missouri so up their own ass about this journalism school?
Because we're the only school that owns and operates an NBC affiliate where students are required to work before they graduate. And it's the same with the newspaper. It's the same with the magazine. It's the same with like websites. Like,
it's so badass
in the Capitol.
It's badass.
It's so like the opportunities are incredible. And the thing is, like, I want everyone to have access to that, but not everyone does. So I took advantage of the opportunities that I had. And like, I got to cover like state capitol political news as like a 20-year-old. Like I got to run around the state capitol in my little kitten heels, like chasing after lawmakers to get a quote about a bill they had just supported. And then the summer before my senior year, I got to work as a junior correspondent for Reuters in Brussels, Belgium. Like, how many people can say that they've done that?
Not many. I can tell you that I dated a graduate of the journalism school from Mizzou. So when we dated, first of all, lovely person, not trying to cause trouble. I will say many of her friends were Mizzou journalism graduates. And I heard they for years after they graduated, there was a very healthy bond would be the kind way of saying it, and a kind mutual admiration and respect. And hey, the bar was set so high for us and we have to go out there and get it. And they're all now in the media capital of New York. And there are these Mizzou people who love to talk about how they're going to do it. And some would say that there was almost a cult-like devotion to their school. So I'm glad to hear that I was able to guess it, because as soon as I heard you saying, I could hear the tone of voice change. I said, this reminds me of what it was like dating my ex. These Mizzou journalism people. No, it's a great school. Great school.
I mean, it is called the Mizzou Mafia for a reason.
It really is. You probably
there's
know
literally university merch that says Mizzou Mafia members. So, like, we've embraced it. It's fine.
You're a little, I think you mentioned you're 31 now?
I am.
Yeah, so you're younger. I don't think you know my ex. That would not, if you did, that relationship burned bright and fast. And anyway, I'll stop rambling about that. I love it. Yeah, I mean, to get into that journalism school, you have to be really devoted and to graduate and get out there. So yeah, it's quite badass.
Thank you. Sometimes I forget all the cool things I've had a chance to do. And then in conversations like this, where I'm talking to someone I've never talked to before, I'm like, oh yeah, there was that time that there was something floating in the ocean, and I had to go to the Netherlands to cover a press conference for CNN because that was part of the junior correspondent thing for Reuters in Brussels. Like, I just went into work that day, and they were like, there's some sort of chemical something in an ocean and no country is claiming it. And now there's going to be a press conference at The Hague, and here's your equipment and the train leaves in 30 minutes. Go.
And you were how old?
And like, that was my life. I was 21.
That's so cool. Get out there and do it. But also journalism is a world where it is very smart that school holds their standards high, ignites that passion, creates that mafia vibe, creates that safety net of graduates taking care of each other, because as an industry, things are more and more tenuous every day, is my understanding. Newsrooms are getting shut down, constant unionization fights, constant weird things everyone out there should look into that I bet you can speak to, this is more newspapers than TV, is my understanding, but a lot of local papers with long lineages of being local papers being bought up by these corporate entities that exist specifically to buy up local papers and often shut them down or merge them into ways where there's just less local coverage, more regional coverage, but it's all kind of like corporations treating local journalism almost as a slot machine of like, if we can make money off this, we will. And if not, we have a way to get out. But you probably know a lot more about that than I do.
I mean, I can't speak to newspapers just because I've never worked at one. But I mean, the local TV media landscape, like more and more of the corporate owners are getting bigger and bigger and buying out the smaller family-owned companies that used to oversee different network affiliates. It's tough. Like, you have to face the reality that changes will be required in order to survive. And I believe in the need for local coverage. Like, there's a phrase, which I don't think is always kind, but like parachuting journalism, where people come from out of town, cover a big thing and leave and never come back.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I want people to understand about local journalists is we live here. Everything that impacts y'all impacts us. Like, we are experiencing the same things that you are. Something I mentioned to Andrea as well is I'm also a poet.
Wow.
As like a passion.
That's a cool combination.
And I wrote something, I think it was last year, about we want to be there for the celebrations, not just the shell casing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, we want to highlight everything that's happening and give a comprehensive view of our community, which means it's not just about like blood and guts. Like, if it bleeds, it leads. Not necessarily, right? Like, I care so much about giving a fully representative view of what's going on where I live.
Share as much as you'd like, considering that you work in a very public field, and we've shared some info about you. So share as much as you like, whether it's the details or maybe just the emotional experience based on your comfort level. Are there stories you remember from early in your career where you sit there and you go, that just went out and we got to start working on the next thing already. But damn, if I hadn't gotten to that, or if my team hadn't gotten to that, nobody would have. There's a story that just got told that everyone else would have missed, or that I helped bring to light in a way that shows you that impact of keeping it local.
That's such a good question.
Well, I'm no journalist, but I do my best.
I mean, you've been interviewing people for years, so you figured some stuff out.
I went to Rutgers. I know you Mizzou people look down at Rutgers. I heard it. No, that was mostly just my ex-girlfriend.
I was going to say, I'm like, really? That's so unfortunate.
we had a relationship where it was really, really great, but when we would fight, it was not good. It was one of those where the fights just got too real. And one time she made fun of me for using the words ain't and gonna. And I was like, I'm from Jersey. And she's like, yeah, believe me, if there's one thing everyone knows about you, it's that you're from Jersey. Shut up about Jersey. Which honestly, I think everyone has a point when they say that about me. That being said, any stories that jump out from earlier in your career where you realized, oh, this is meaningful. We got to something here.
Oh, yes. Okay. So while I was still in undergrad, there was a bill being talked about at the state level regarding, it was something about like covering some sort of medication or treatment under Medicaid. And since I worked at the Capitol 2 days a week, went to a hearing about this bill because I thought it was interesting, and my manager let me. And there was this mom with a son who had seizures all the time. And, it was medical marijuana. It was medical marijuana before it was legalized. And apparently it helped with the seizures, like helped ease them. There were fewer of them. And so I ended up talking to that mom afterwards and then going to her home and seeing her son, her other child who didn't have the same challenges, talking with her and her husband. Like, I just spent an evening with them while they were having dinner after work in this like small rural town, and just talking about how devastating it was to not have access to treatment that they were seeing in other surrounding states was working for kids with the same condition. But eventually, like, medical marijuana became a thing in this state. And so she was able to like get the treatment that her son needed. And I'll just never forget, like, I think that was the first time as a student journalist that I was able to have a real conversation with someone and connect with someone to the point that they cried in front of me. And something that I think is a little old school is to be like super detached when you're reporting. You want to be professional. But I remember, like, off camera, you couldn't see based on how I positioned the camera, but I was holding the dad's hand as he was crying, like talking about how he was concerned about his son's future. And like just being able to be both a human and a journalist in that moment and then share that story with our audience, like, and then doing the follow-up when things got approved and, you know, treatment was able to start that helped, like that just meant so much to me.
That's a wild story. And like you said, the impact of knowing these are, cute dog. That's a cute dog bark, by the way.
Yeah, someone just rang the doorbell, but I'm gonna let them leave whatever the package is or whatever at the door.
It's all good.
Chill out. Anywho.
I love it. And hearing you say that you're of the community, these are ultimately on some level neighbors. You're then super young, but even now part of a team where, like you said, you're local journalists. They're shopping at the same stores you are. They're affected by the same tax codes that get passed. It's part of that impact and it's part of that emotion. And hearing that you held that man's hand, I sit there and I go, right, that's the power of being. That's the power of being a journalist, and also on a in the trenches level in an area of, it would be almost inhuman to not make some effort like that, even if, yes, the old school is detachment. Well, no, you got to have some humanity as part of this too.
And I remember my journalism professor teaching me that, like the semester before. I remember him showing us a story of a mom who had just lost her son to gun violence, and him saying, what you didn't see was me holding that woman's hand. Like, that was literally something that I learned in school that I then took for the station, the network affiliate that I worked for in undergrad. So I'm grateful that I learned that, yes, you can maintain a certain level of professionalism and you can still show that you care and have feelings and are invested.
It's so funny we're talking today. I just last night read an article. I'm a big nerd about long form written journalism, magazine, newspaper articles. I get very nerdy about it. And I was reading an article in Texas Monthly, which is one of my favorite magazines. They do really, really incredible stuff, especially their true crime. It's true crime. They have a long legacy of true crime that's not, people have heard on the show, I have real problems with true crime, especially in podcasting, but this will drive you nuts. There was a story of a father who his son was murdered with his girlfriend in the 80s. The police work was very clearly botched. The dad knew it. The dad was on the scene when they found his son's car and was saying, please take, prints of these other tire tracks nearby. They told him to drive the car to the station himself, let him contaminate the evidence. They didn't believe that it was anything. They thought the kid had run away at that point, blah, blah, blah. Really infuriating stuff. But this is where it will drive you nuts, is they had this part of the article that I found shocking, which was that Unsolved Mysteries at some point reached out to this family, which is a show that is on some level, right? This is one of the early shows that starts to take really shocking news events and merge them with entertainment in a way that I would argue has gotten progressively less healthy for society. The entertainmentification of our news, right? The dopamine chasing of our news. Unsolved Mysteries, I think you could say, was one of the early shots across the bow in that. And back then, when Unsolved Mysteries covered a story and did reenactments, they asked actual people involved to play themselves in the reenactments. So this man was in reenactments on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, interacting with someone who they found almost a eerie double of his deceased son, and he has to act in these scenes against his own son as they film it and then package it with this exploitative, like, who did the murder? And that's the exact opposite of having your hand held. It's being exploited for your desperation. And I sit there, I go, ooh, I read that. I go, that part, I was like, that's so dark. And hearing you describe that story and the compassion and the empathy behind it that you've been able to summon, I go, that's not just the opposite, but I have to imagine in some way it must make your skin crawl to hear about some of that ratings chasing side of it.
Oh, yeah. Like, that makes me feel awful. That hurts my stomach. Re-traumatizing someone. And that's hard when there's big breaking news, right? When we are talking to people in almost the immediate, if not the immediate aftermath of death or violence, you have to figure out, like, where is the line? You kind of just have to suss it out of if someone wants to talk, if they're ready to talk. Like, so many times we tell people, if you're knocking on someone's door and they're not expecting you, don't come with the camera in their face. Like, leave that in the news car. Go up. Just introduce yourself. No microphones, no nothing. Say what you're there for. If they are open and willing to chat, great. If they say no, if they're not an elected official or someone whose, like, public-facing job requires them to be held accountable for something, don't go shoving a camera in their face. If it's just a regular, everyday citizen, be respectful of their wants and needs. Like, be a person. You can't detach being a person from being a journalist and do a good job, in my mind.
I want to pause right there because that was just a quiet moment, but I just want to underline it. You can't detach being a person from being a journalist and be a good journalist, in my mind. What a beautiful thought. What a beautiful thing to say, and no wonder you are good at what you do, caller. We'll be right back. Have you ever tried to break a bad habit and then you feel like you're stuck in your head focusing on it? You feel like it's this uphill climb. You feel like you're climbing a mountain and then it becomes so difficult. You're like, I don't even have shoes on. I'm climbing this mountain in flip-flops. That's somehow how it feels. That is sometimes how it can feel to break a bad habit. Everybody's been there. But here's a breath of fresh air. Literally, it's Fume. Fume is about not giving up. It's about switching up. Fume takes your bad habit and makes it a better habit, a healthier habit, and a more enjoyable habit. Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device that does just that. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy. It makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial, and it's designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. I have a friend who switched to Fume, was looking to break one of those bad habits, and it blew him away. Said that the flavors were on target and way more flavorful than he expected. Loved the feel and the look of it. It allowed him to retain the not negative parts of the habit, which helped making the negative parts go away that much easier. It's such a smart product. If you got the bad habit in your life, go ahead, get a Fume. Plus, Fume's just released a magnetic stand. So there's no more losing your Fume around the house. It's built with fidgeting in mind. You can spin your Fume around on the magnetic stand. Start the year off right with the good habit by going to tryfume.com/beautiful and getting the Journey Pack today. Fume is giving listeners of the show 10% off when they use the code BEAUTIFUL to help make starting the good habit that much easier. Go to tryfume.com/beautiful to save 10% off the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com/beautiful. Thanks again to all of our advertisers. Now let's finish off the phone call.
You can't detach being a person from being a journalist and do a good job, in my mind.
And when, I'm sure you must study it in school. It must be something that's discussed. Was it, I know people say that 9/11 changed the way news works and the constant news crawl and the constant sort of catastrophizing. People would point towards OJ and that whole era of the late 90s, OJ, Joey Buttafuoco, Menendez brothers, sensationalized court TV, cameras in the courtroom broadcasting macabre details of things. But then I sit there and I go, you can look back at the history of journalism dating back to, the dawn of newspaper printing, where there were always people who were willing to go for the shock and the gore more than other publications. But do you have a sense of when it, or not even when, why it feels less personal and more grim and more, they just want my click and they're trying to scare me? Do you know why it feels that way to so many more people now?
I think it sometimes is that way if it's not what I would consider a reliable, reputable news source. I think there are media outlets that are so concerned with the numbers and the money that it's like, what's going to hit? But I also feel like a civic responsibility. Like I view it as a public service, especially when there are like huge breaking news events, including like weather that could be dangerous or deadly. I think some of it feels less personal because it is less personal. But I also think if you pay attention to a lot of the local stuff, you can feel the difference in that compared to other. And I'm not like knocking all national or international news. I'm just saying that when you don't have to be on the air 24/7, literally, I think there's more breathing room to build that connection.
I'm very interested in wondering who you look to as the people setting the bar in your industry, because when you bring that up, and again, you were just so classy about it, but I know what you mean. Like, people on my side of the political fence look at Fox News and go, man, that's exploitative and evil. Then there's conservatives who look at MSNBC and go, that is irresponsible, and they're prioritizing all these things that create division and fights, and then, you know, it used to be that we would kind of think of CNN as the one that was more down the middle, but every time I turn on CNN, it seems like, you know, you get certain hours that are news and then a lot of editorializing and even just kind of people yelling at each other, and it's clear they have so much programming to fill, and I go, it just, all of this seems kind of angry, and all of this seems kind of pointed in ways that feel dishonest. Then you sit there and you go, well, who is it then? Is it NPR? Because now I'm starting to read articles that NPR has a lot of weird stuff going on, and people point at them as having a liberal agenda. Is it PBS? Is PBS the impartial one because it's not for profit? Like, who do you, as someone in the journalism industry, who do you look to as like, here's the people or the outlets that I think set the standard that we should all be chasing?
I mean, I follow individual journalists across the country that I think are doing incredible work. On the Road with Steve Hartman, that's on CBS Evening News. Once a week, I think it's on Fridays. He puts out like a feel-good story. And it's just always so well done and well told, and always makes you feel something, whether you're laughing or crying. There's that emotional connection. So I look to him. Boyd Hupert works at a station in Minneapolis, and so does Jana Shortle. And both of them, Boyd has a series, I can't remember what it's called. It's like 10,000 stories of 10,000 lakes or something like that. But again, he does the like off the beaten path stories that you might not on their face think are newsworthy, but then you get to know the people that he's profiling, and it makes you feel connected to Minneapolis, even if you're not there. And Jana does like this whole half hour, and was like one of the first. So I'm a queer cisgender woman, and I'm feminine, so I get perceived as straight a lot of the time. But Jana dresses more masculinely, and was the first person that I saw, assigned female at birth, that had like a short haircut and wore like menswear on the air. And that's just part of Jana's thing. Like, Jana's just showing up as who they are. And I'm saying they because I don't know if they use she or they, but showing up as their authentic self in a way that is visibly queer. And that just like sets such the tone for me. And now there's another reporter named Megan Mitchell, who's a little more feminine than Jana, but also wears like the suits and the flats and does a lot of LGBTQ coverage, which I've also done where I am and I'm really proud of. And I just think like they're not hiding who they are, and they're not following some ancient industry standard. Like, not everyone has to look alike. Not everyone has to sound alike. And I see a lot of that on the local level across the country, and I just want more of it.
I love that answer. I love that you can point to certain regions, certain places that have these entrenched people doing good things, but there's dedication to the local side of it there. And it's also eye-opening to hear, coming from someone who works in journalism, that your instinct is, here are some individual journalists who I think are doing really groundbreaking stuff, or really honest stuff, or really noble stuff. And it's interesting to me because it's like so many other industries where you go, it's a corporatized money-making outlet is hard to trust. But within it, you can find those people and hang on to them really hardcore, which is maybe a little bit of a sad condemnation, but also very hopeful in knowing that those people are out there.
And that's the thing. I think if you take the time to find those people, you can find them like everywhere, no matter where you are in the country, there's going to be at least one person that's covering stories that matter to you. It's just about finding that person. And who knows, like maybe from there, you'll see that they have colleagues that are doing other cool things and you'll learn something new from them. Like, it's just getting started by, like, if you see something, whether it's on social media or wherever, and you like it, maybe look at who the byline is, right? Like maybe see if you want to follow them on social media and see more of what they're putting out. I think if people took the extra second to like see the name or the face and to connect that with what they're enjoying reading or watching or listening to, it might bring back, like you mentioned earlier, like that loneliness isn't there because now you know it's a real person behind what you're taking in.
New Jersey is always... New Jersey is legendarily politically corrupt. Part of why is because half the states in the New York market, half the states in the Philly market, and it's always been tough for Jersey to have its own market dedicated to covering Jersey stuff. So a lot of stuff doesn't get examined by journalists because the newsrooms are over state lines in the bigger cities. I do have to shout out, I think you would love, there's this guy named Brian Donahue who for years, News 12 New Jersey, which is like kind of, it is a little bit overshadowed by the New York stations and the South and the Philly stations, but it gets a lot of love. He did these long running series called Positively New Jersey, where it would just be, here's a quirky or interesting thing that I will go. And I was on a couple of them, and it was him showing up with GoPros. So here's how local journalism works sometimes, and you can vouch for this. I was amazed because I was a fan of Brian's. And then he met me once. I was doing some TV stuff, and we went back to a hot dog stand in the neighborhood where I grew up. And he shows up with his tripods, his GoPros, his mics, no other staff, just him. It's like, you want to do the feel-good culture pieces? Then you have to do it all yourself. We can dedicate no other resources to you. But the one that for some reason always sticks in my mind was, he was like, if you take this one train line in New Jersey, you pass this river that goes through an industrial area, and behind some warehouses in the middle of the river, there's a surfboard that's been there for decades. And everyone kind of views it as this landmark. You kind of know when you're getting close to the next stop. Like, everybody knows how far you are from home when you pass the weird surfboard in the middle of this industrial wasteland river. I'm going to go climb down there and figure out whose surfboard that is. And I thought it was, in a way, really profound and powerful journalism. And knowing that he's just doing it all himself. And News 12 recently let him go. He landed on his feet, but New Jersey sort of rebelled. They were like, you don't take away Brian Donahue. He's the best. So much love to Brian Donahue. And I have a feeling you would love him if you got to know his stuff.
I'm going to have to look up his stuff because my favorite stories are the ones that don't come from a press release, that don't come from a news conference. My favorite stories are the ones that I find out in the wild, like just living my life, being invested in my community, building relationships with people, and I'm just having a conversation with someone and they offhand mention something and I go, wait, that's really cool. Would you be willing to talk about that on camera? And often they say yes. I've put so many of my friends on TV, but I love it because they're like real normal people doing cool things. Like, why would we not show that off? Yeah.
I love it. I mean, that's kind of the premise of this show too. I think you and I are kindred spirits on that one. Mm-hmm. I do have to ask, because look, we're in an election year. That affects your job. How do you, as a journalist, I mean, and I'm not asking you to throw anybody under the bus, but the mandates must start rolling downhill of, hey, crazy Biden stuff, crazy Trump stuff gets ratings. What's our version of it? Let alone the fact that you were in the industry when major portions of Americans were being taught to yell phrases like fake news, crooked media. It's got to be something that's on your mind. And while I know it's exhausting to talk about, I do feel like while I have a journalist here, I have to ask you, how do you feel about all that? And also, how do you stay sane during an election year in America? Because that might help some of our listeners stay sane as well.
I stay sane by disconnecting on my days off. I do not have my work email sent to my phone because I'm a zero inbox person where everything has to be read or deleted or saved somewhere. So if I had my work email sent to my phone, I would constantly be checking in with what's going on. I also don't have alerts for non-local news outlets. I follow them on social media or, subscribe to websites or whatever. But if I'm not at work, I'm not actively seeking stuff out unless it's something huge, like, an election night. And even then, I'm usually just waiting for whatever the end result is, as opposed to watching hours and hours of coverage. That's the only way I can stay sane, is not being connected 24/7. And we've even said, like, we had a mass shooting a couple months ago, and my anchor, I literally wrote for my anchor to say, and he agreed with it and everyone agreed with it because it's true. One of the tips from mental health professionals is not to be constantly plugged in. So if you need to turn this off for your own mental health and well-being, that is something you can do.
Simple as that. So even you, someone who professionally needs to know everything that comes across the news desk, even you are like, I find time to get away from that shit and filter it out of my system.
Honestly, that's what the poetry is about. Like, that is a creative outlet and a writing space where, sometimes I write about stuff that's going on because it's big and it's on my mind. But in that venue, at an open mic or a showcase, I share a little bit more of my thoughts and feelings. Whereas, like, in the newsroom, or if I'm representing the station in any professional capacity, I would be a little more tight-lipped about opinions, right? But in an artistic space and platform, I feel like I can share more of what's going on with me internally.
You went to school for journalism. Were you still studying poetry, or was that something that developed post-academia?
So it developed pre and post. I was published in a children's anthology at 10, which I don't even remember. I don't even remember how I found out about that contest, but there was a contest and I sent something in, and then I got something in the mail that said I won. And then a little while later got the book in the mail, and there was my name and my poem. And I always took creative writing classes in middle and high school. And then I got into journalism school, and I got so busy with that, I didn't really take the time to write for myself for a decade. Like 18 to 28, barely wrote anything. And then like 2021, I also sing, but all of my favorite open mics for singing had gone away permanently because of the pandemic. And my partner encouraged me to get back into journaling and writing because they knew I had done that before. And that actually led to a book. I have a book of poetry that's out in the world now.
You have a book of poetry?
And yeah. And it was all because my partner was like, why don't you get back into the creative writing thing? And then it just kind of happened.
What kind would you say, are you following the whims every time you sit down, or are there certain themes that are across the board in your poetry?
So the book is about my experience with bipolar disorder. In my early to mid-20s, it kind of blew up my life because I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't being treated because I wasn't diagnosed. And so it basically burned down the life that I had built post-grad. And then I had to, go into the hospital and take time to recover. And it took months and months to get back to working full time. But the book, it's basically like a memoir through poems, and it details the before, during, and after of all of that.
Wow. I mean, first of all, I'm sorry. I've been there, as you know, similar age too. I don't think we're alone in that. And I'm also really happy that you found a creative outlet to help process that experience, because that's one of the beautiful things about the human condition is from time to time you find a way to channel it and express it when you're on the other side. I think that's really beautiful.
Well, my favorite thing is when people pick up the book and show me the semicolon tattoo. Do you know what the semicolon tattoo means?
Walk me through it. I have been walked through it before, but I'm embarrassed to say I do forget.
That's okay. And there may be listeners who don't know. So in a sentence, if there's a semicolon, it's because the sentence could have ended with a period, but it continued. There are more words after that. So the semicolon is there where the sentence could have ended, but it continued. So people who get semicolon tattoos are indicating that their life could have ended at some point, and it has continued. And it serves as a reminder that they didn't put a period on the end of that sentence. And the last part of my book, in the very last poem, basically says that your story is a book with many, many more chapters to go.
I love that. So you put out this book. You put out a book to process it all. That's part of your semicolon experience, is this book.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where I was writing, but I didn't know what I was writing. I just knew it felt important to me, and I wanted to share it, and I didn't know how to do that. So I reached out to someone that I know who has published their own stuff, and I was really just looking for advice. Is there a magazine I don't know about? Should I start a blog? I don't really know what this is, but I want to share it somehow. And this person, after listening to me talk for half an hour, said, I think you're writing a book. I think you don't know that you're writing a book. But because I am a small independent publisher, I can put this out into the world. And we had worked together in a professional context before. So without even looking at my manuscript, they said, I know you can write. I believe in you. When you're ready, let's go. And we ended up putting it out the next year.
I mean, that never happens. You're aware of that, right?
Oh, I am the one in a million.
There's definitely some frustrated writers listening to this show right now. Really? You had somebody who believed in you, a sight unseen. Good for you. Good for you.
I'm sorry.
No,
I don't know what to say,
thing.
Except it must have been meant to be somehow. I don't know if I always believe in that, but it felt like we came together for a reason.
And as someone who has also written a couple books, how cool does it feel when you get that first galley copy and you're holding it in your hands?
I had someone record it when I got the first shipment or whatever. And I'm literally shaking, physically shaking. I can't stop smiling. I'm giggling. I'm turning red right now just talking about it because it was so exciting to see it brought to life.
That's cool. That's why I always say if there's anybody out there who's trying to write a book or make an album or do anything creative and you're banging your head against the wall, just find a way to make it exist. Don't worry if anyone ever finds it, because it's that moment where you first get to feel it and touch it in a visceral way and know it exists. That nobody gets to take away. That is the reward. That's what you're moving on from. And that's what you're chasing if you do it again. Not the reception, not the critical praise, not the money. All you can do is try to get it over the finish line. So someday you can hold it in your hand and look at it and go, this is pretty fucking cool. Pretty fucking cool. That's what you get. And it's a beautiful thing.
It's probably one of the coolest things I've ever done, honestly.
And you've done some cool stuff. Now, our time is up on the free feed. I feel so lucky that you took some time on your day off, largely to talk about work, when your whole thing is you like to disconnect from work. So it means a lot to me. But I do think it helped people, especially, I bet there are a lot of people out there right now going, you know, I do get too much of my news through Twitter feeds I follow, and then they're cluttered up with all the other stuff that Twitter brings. Or I bet there are other people out there going, yeah, I don't know when the last time I just turned on my local TV was, and that is friendlier, warmer, more connected to me. I bet there's some people who are gonna go back. So thank you for that. We're gonna say goodbye to the free feed people, and if you're down to hang out, I'd love to open it up to the people who have subscribed at beautifulanonymous.com for 5 more questions with you about totally other random parts of your life that can help us know you as a more well-rounded person.
Let's go for it.
Caller, thank you so much for sharing your story, for getting out there and letting the people know of a not very identified Midwestern city know what's going on. It's really cool of you to talk about what you do and who you are and how it all came to be. Let's go, Mizzou. Tigers, I believe. Let's go, Tigers. Anyway, thank you so much to Andrea Quinn, the High Priestess of Beautiful Anonymous, for producing the show. Thank you to Shell Shag for our theme song. Go to chrisgeth.com if you want to know more about me. If you want a story on the show, and maybe we don't tape at times that are convenient for you. Maybe you feel like you have a story that's underrepresented on the show, whether that's the life experience or your background. We want this to be a show for everybody. 973-306-4676 is our voicemail line. Call up. Let us know what you want to talk about. Andrew goes through them all. Get in touch with you. We are on Instagram at Beautiful Anonymous Pod. You can join the Facebook group, Beautiful Anonymous, the community. Thanks so much, everybody. This week on Beautiful Anonymous Plus, here's some of what you'll get from the 5 questions. I also miss local kids programming and just that weird regional, here's the person showing monster movies in the middle of the night, and they have some weird host who does the throws in and out of commercial who you only know if you're from here. I think that's an era of television that was really special. And like I said, it's really newscasters and sportscasters that are the only real living vestiges of that in a lot of places.
Yeah, and the meteorologist, too.
Everybody loves their weather person. Everybody does love that weather person. Wherever you're from, you have a weird sentimental attachment to your weather person. And now how do most of us get our weather? We look on an iPhone in the morning and go, it's going to be high 64, and that's it. But no, you need Willard Scott. You need Sam Champion. You need these kind of charming weirdos who are sort of bored with doing the same thing every day, so they try to find kooky ways to spice it up. You need that.
I love hearing you get hyped about it, and I love you throwing out names that I know. That just makes my heart so happy.
Don't forget to sign up for Beautiful Anonymous Plus at beautifulanonymous.com.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Who's ready to level up their mental fitness and win the seconds of the day? Well, at least that's my goal. Join me, Mark Champagne, on Behind the Human, a podcast where I dive into the stories and practices of extraordinary individuals. From billionaires to Olympians and cultural icons like Tony Hawk, each episode unveils the pathways and the mental fitness strategies that propel them to the top. Now available on all major podcast platforms. Here's Thriving Minds.